So good morning, everyone. We wanted to start this by talking about how do you make the most of times when there are hidden opportunities? What's some good ways into discovering what those hidden opportunities are? How do you make the most of them? And how do we, and how do we all both survive and thrive through what's going on in the world at the moment? I think the thing to say before we kind of almost start is that none of what I'm going to share with you this morning is to talk down or decry in any sense the extraordinary sort of events we've got going on all over the world at the moment. I mean, we've got people who are, very, very fearful and quite rightly fearful in lots of senses about the virus and are worrying about the impacts on their health and on their families. And we can't talk to that in these webinars except to just acknowledge that that's a very real and present fear for people. Our focus here is on what can you do to, protect and enhance your business. But anything we talk about in a protect and enhance your business sense is not to decry or ignore the fact that there are some very serious issues going on in the world out there. But what is going on from a business point of view? I mean, if you go back to sort of basic neurological theory, what we've got at the moment, it's almost like reptilian and limbic brain responses going completely off the chart. So your reptilian brain is the thing actually that kind of stops you walking out in front of cars. It's the basic self-protection mechanism that we all have. And the limbic brain is much more about, emotional reactions to things. And, it feels to us at the moment like we're at kind of peak panic, that there's lots of businesses out there, perhaps the majority of businesses out there, just really struggling to adjust to a world that feels like it's changed extraordinarily over the last few days. The interesting thing about change, if you go to the kind of Buddhist view of the world, is that actually it's constant. So, we kid ourselves that the world is, inert. We kid ourselves that things are stable and static. But actually, things are always moving around. Things are always shifting. Nature's always changing. What we were facing 10 years ago is not what we're facing now, and it's not what we'll be facing in 10 years' time. But most leaders and organizations fear change because they fear their ability to cope with change. We feel as though if we're not in a place where we can we're not in a place where we can access our resourcefulness. We're not in a place where we can access our innate creativity. We feel as though actually we're at the mercy of events rather than we have an opportunity to work with the energy of events. So the more that we're in that kind of like reptilian brain response and the more that we're in fear, actually what happens is we only diminish our own creativity. We diminish our ability to access our innate in the moment resourcefulness. Our experience at Corporate Punk has always been quite simple. And actually the business was founded on one principle, actually, which is that in reality, most teams and most organizations are far more resilient, far more responsive, far more innovative than they actually think they are. That whatever's going on out there in the world, you have got in your organization right now everything that you need from a talent point of view, from an experience point of view, and from an energy point of view in order to be able to prosper. We're just really good at getting in our own way, and we're really good at thinking that that's not the case. So actually, the world is going to calm down. Panic is not a sustainable emotion for people. It's too exhausting. So what will happen over the next few weeks is we'll start to see the world calming down. And while we may not go back to normal for a time, we are in a position where actually those of us who can think calmly, who can make good decisions now, and who can access that resourcefulness and that resilience will find new ways to contribute, new ways to add value to others, and in doing that they will drive their own growth and they will drive their others' growth. So other people's growth, sorry. So that's the principle of it, really. When the world is going into panic, what it's doing is it's diminishing its ability to actually address the problems it faces. When you're in panic, you're actually reducing your ability to address the problems that you face. The world is going to calm down if we can access our innate creativity now. If we can get out of panic now, we're actually in a better place to be able to help others, and actually in a better place to be able to prosper as a result of that. So I want to talk to you about different ways of spotting opportunity out there, but I just want to spend a minute on this because it is absolutely critical. You can't spot fresh opportunities and you can't take advantage of fresh opportunities if your business doesn't basically survive. So the principle here is fit your own oxygen mask before you fit anybody else's. This is advice that is very, very sound advice. It's look after your existing clients, negotiate on terms, lock down work where you need to, root and branch review of costs, making sure that any unnecessary costs are cut out. The critical thing about cost cutting, by the way, is that we can also be, if we're not careful, we can scale back and we can de-invest to a point where it actually becomes really hard for us to scale back up again. We can also cut costs out of parts of the business that actually can support us being able to do new things in the future. I was talking with a client just a couple of days ago about opportunity spotting, and he was going, I'm going to make half of my administration team redundant. And I made the point to him that maybe it's the people in that admin team that could be out there doing research, looking and listening to what the market's saying and thinking creatively about what that business can do. Maybe that's a far better use of, that time, effort, and money than you save notionally by just letting those people go, given that you have to pay them out. So there is this thing about, let's review costs and let's make sure we're being sensible, but let's not cut off our own nose to spite our face. There's plenty of credit out there. There's the government's business bank is lining up all sorts of credit lines. Take as many of them as you need at the moment, but even the ones you don't need, while you can do so, because it's always the case with things like interest-free loans. You take them now, you can pay them back. So I'm not talking about being profligate here at all. I'm not talking about unnecessary debt, but I am talking about access to lines of finance can be really, really useful at this time. But the most important thing, and what I've been pointing to so far, is about leadership resilience. It's about remaining calm. It's about conveying belief in what you and your organisation is doing and doing everything possible to avoid conveying fear, disbelief and panic. I was talking to my own coach yesterday, and he was making a very, very good point that people don't tend to trust nervous doctors. And I thought that was true. If you're going to go in and see a doctor, you want that doctor to feel calm and in control. And it's the same. People look to leaders for calmness and control at times like this. So it's really important we work on ourselves over this time too. When we've done all that and we've got that in place, then the question is, how do we go out there and spot the right opportunities and take advantage of them? This is the process. So before we talk about the process, I just want to talk about the basics about how we need to behave in the business that we need to build. If you were going to go out there and find new opportunities in the market at this time, here are the things in our experience you need to have in place. The first thing is dedicated resource. Finding opportunities is what Cal Newport calls deep work. So that is to say, it's not the kind of thing that you can hop into and out of in little incremental chunks. You can't spot hidden opportunities in a market if it's something you're going to do in half-hour spots between client Zoom calls, for example. It's not going to work. You need to find dedicated resource, you need to protect that resource, and you need to make sure that you give it the time and the space that's necessary to do the job. So deep work, which is to say being in the flow, being creative, that kind of thing, is something that we all need to have resources to be able to do. Leadership mindset I've spoken about already. Resilient, calm and focused, those are the key things. When we're talking about opportunity spotting, really what we're talking about is finding what the opportunity is and getting stuff to market quickly to test whether there's appetite for it. So prototyping is really your friend at the moment. You want to be looking at new things. You want to be creating value propositions if you can. And you want to be testing and learning, ideally on one-day cycles. So what that means is doing the research, coming up with the idea, shipping it quickly, seeing if it connects, and checking back in every single day. And do not overinvest time in any one thing at this point. To do that, the supporting behavior on that is about morning stand-ups and evening KPIs. Getting a team together, there's dedicated resources I'm talking about. A dedicated resource, by the way, might be one part-time worker. It doesn't need a whole team of people sometimes. But doing morning stand-ups, what have we done? What are we going to do? How are we going? And then evening KPIs, how have we been performing? And then here are the three things that you need to do to process in order. The first thing, what is it that clients really want and need right now? So most of the time we can be very bad, those of us in the service industries particularly, about thinking about what it is our clients need. What is it that they need right now? You've got to get to the fundamentals on this. Need, not nice to haves, is the key thing. Obviously, clients might need cash flow support. They might need better financial management strategies. Some of us are better placed to talk about those than others. It's what are the things that they need that we can potentially answer. We need to be expressing needs in the language of the client. We need to be making sure that clients are in a position where they can where when we're talking to them about what those needs are, that they can understand, because it feels like it's played back to them in their language. When you're doing this, when you're thinking about what it is clients want and need, the job at this point is to get divergent. Go as broad as you can. Think as laterally about what it is that people might want. Think about what's going on for them in their own lives and in their own work, and just get as many ideas down on paper as possible. Sometimes good ideas are a function of having lots of ideas. Supporting that process, you want to be fact-finding directly and fact-finding through research. When you've done that, then how do those needs intersect with our values and positioning? So one of the things that really bad leaders will do at the moment is they will throw everything up in the air. They will throw their values up in the air. They'll throw their heritage up in the air. They'll forget what their business is actually about, and they'll get desperate. That is not the basis on which to sell. Stupid shit, if it worked, you'd be doing it. So don't do stupid shit. You know it doesn't work. What works is remaining connected to what you're about and what you can offer. So be clear on your passion, be clear on what you care about as a business, and be really clear on what your unique value is. Sometimes businesses aren't clear on what their unique value is at all. And there's some work that needs to be done to really dig into that. No heritage or positioning bypasses. Do not give up the ghost. Do not give up the thing that you've spent however many months or years and goodness knows how much money building. What you've been good at is what you are good at. And the key thing is to work out how that intersects with what clients really want and need at the moment. Don't bypass your values. If you've been about integrity, continue to be about integrity. If you're about doing the right thing, which is what corporate punk has always been about, we're going to continue to do the right thing. This is our version, recession rebellion is our version of wanting to try and do the right thing at the moment. We're not bypassing our values and suddenly starting to, chase after any and all business on the basis that we think there's a quick buck in it. You betray your values, you betray your people, you betray your clients. And no Wild West behavior. There's going to be plenty of people out there at the moment who actually are going to do anything to make a quick buck. There's doctors out there who've got call centres going, who are selling COVID-19 tests, for example, at massive markups, rather than doing the right thing, which is to make sure that those tests are passed on to the NHS where they're needed. We do not need Wild West behaviour in business, and actually it's not a viable long-term strategy. So what is it clients want and need, and how do those needs intersect with our values and position, and how do we remain connected to where we add value? And then what can we offer given operational constraints? So what can we offer is what new things can we take and test in the market on that one-day cycle, supported by morning stand-ups and evening KPIs. What would that offer comprise? Again, we're really good sometimes, particularly in the service industries, about talking about our features and our product offer and the elements of the service that we've developed. We can be really bad sometimes in thinking about what its benefits to clients would actually be. When clients really want and need things right now, what they don't want is to have to wait. They don't want to have to go through a complex and convoluted process to buy. They don't want to have to feel as though they have to work for it, which is not to say these are lazy people, but they've got deep unmet needs at the moment. They want to know that you will be there with the right solution at that time. So those benefits have to be connected and they have to be articulated in a way that makes it sound easy, compelling, simple. How would we take it to market? I said earlier on about prototype approaches. Sometimes the best way of doing these things is just to write a couple of pages, jot down what it is, make sure that you've got that clarity on the needs and the benefits, and take it to market that day. Talk to clients about it. We're thinking about doing this sort of thing. Do you think it's the kind of thing that you would need right now? And it's about being unashamed to ask for that feedback. And how do we make it as easy as humanly possible to buy? So those are the things that we need to be thinking about. So just to recap, these are very short, sharp sessions this morning, trying to give you things to think about. The world is losing its head. You need to make sure you're not losing yours. You need to make sure that you remain connected and you're resilient, calm, and feeling in control, both for your own sake and for your teams. You also then need to make sure that you've got allocated, dedicated resource to looking at actually what's going on in the world and how do we work with that energy? How do we make sure that we've got the right plays in place for what's going on in the market right now? We then need to be thinking about what do our clients really want and need? Perhaps the way to do that is to approach this as a real opportunity to come up and out of the business that we've already had and to think about what are we great at and how can we connect that to the market in new ways at this point in time? Let's make sure we do not give away the good stuff, do not give away everything that we stand for, everything that we believe, and everything that we've built. But think cleverly also about making things easy to buy, buyable within operational constraints. There is no point selling stuff that needs people to be in the same room to deliver, for example. We've got to be able to do stuff remotely at the moment. And then get those things to market, 24 hours, test, learn, go again, iterate, iterate, iterate. And if we do that, actually all of us will be in a position where very quickly from this point onwards, we will be able to get new things out there and we'll be seeing the benefits of those new things. And that's all I wanted to share with you this morning. Martin.
Wonderful, thanks, Phil. That was short, sharp hitting. I've seen you do this a number of times, but it's always enthralling and fascinating insight. So just to do a little bit of housekeeping, then we'll move on to questions. This is going to dovetail really well as we get into all of this. So as an example, if you think about the being content, if you think about being calm, if you think about dealing with pressure, if you think about not overreacting, if you think about keeping core to your values and what you're best at, all the things that Phil were talking about, tomorrow Daryl's going to be talking about mental resilience and how to build it and things like that as well. So pop along tomorrow and you'll get another short, sharp hit like that. Any spreading of the word for this, so we can make sure that we spread the news of this to as many people as possible, would be welcome. If you wanted to reach out, as you can see on the slide, if you want to do a problem-solving session with us or do some fact-finding, whatever it is, then you can reach out. Our contact details are there. Moving on to questions, as I mentioned, just open up the chat, so it's just at the bottom of Zoom, and you can ask any questions that you like. Just select my name. We've got a few for you here, Phil. In your opinion, what stops people from being creative in the workplace?
Well, two things I would say. One I've kind of covered off already, which is fear, which is, you know, one cannot access one's innate creativity, which is to say, when we talk about creativity, by the way, all we're talking about is the ability to find original answers to difficult questions. It's problem solving is what creativity really is. Fear gets in the way of that. If we're in fight, flight, or freeze, we're not accessing that innate ability in ourselves. The second thing sometimes is actually internal narrative. So we believe ourselves to not be creative. I always say when I stand up and talk to people in some of the keynotes that I deliver, I always say the only reason that you have a job in the end is for your creativity. Unless you're in a purely mechanistic function, which is to say you're working on a factory line or whatever, and even then in some cases it's questionable. Those of us who are working in the knowledge economy are paid to solve problems for our businesses. That can be finance people, it can be HR people, it can be sales people, it can be marketing people, it's certainly people on the board. All of us are here to solve problems, so all of us are here to be creative. So we have to get over that internal narrative about us not being creative people.
Brilliant, and it takes me into the Thursday one actually. So the title of the session I'm running on Thursday is about how to overcome the fear of failure to unlock new opportunities to grow. So that's very much can be about the second part of what Phil was just talking about. Okay, wonderful, Phil. Next one, to using your phrasing, any tips for getting out of your own way? Any common things that you find with people, I guess?
I think sometimes actually my most common tip on getting out of your own way, actually, and this is going to sound like a slightly tautologous answer to your question, but actually to flip that and kind of go, how am I currently getting in my own way, is a really interesting question to ask. I think sometimes that we struggle with being present. We struggle with actually, the mind is constantly obsessing about the future, and it's very much informed by the past. So that issue of being present and just sort of sitting in the moment and asking that question, how is it I might be getting in my own way at the moment, and just opening yourself up to whatever will come through intuitively on that, actually is an extremely powerful technique.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Next one is belief is key, right? So looking at this from a business perspective, how can you find more of it? What do you believe some of the common things that are holding businesses back from finding that belief or taking that belief to market, if you will?
I think what happens with businesses, particularly leaders in businesses sometimes, is that they get disconnected quite quickly from all of the value that they've already created, right? So we were working with a client a few weeks ago. We've been working with them for a while, actually. And it's like they've built this absolutely remarkable business. You know, it's been going for years. It does great things for its client base. It has a unique and unassailable position in the market. And the owners of the business are all there like, about, you know, how bad everything is and what the future might hold. And actually the danger is sometimes, again, it's back to the way the mind works, problems, you know, always worrying about the future. When you sometimes look back at the path that you have been down, when you look back at the path of the business that you've developed, the things that you've actually taken time, energy, effort, and sometimes real risk to create as well. And you acknowledge the journey that you've taken, you acknowledge the bravery you've already shown, you acknowledge the risks, you acknowledge the fact that sometimes it was good and sometimes it was bad, and you acknowledge that you are still here and still with some degree of you know, you're still in the game kind of thing, then actually in the end that can be a really powerful way to connect with belief. The only thing that, you know, some of us need to believe in ourselves is an acknowledgement of the fact that we've already achieved the remarkable.
Amazing. So so I've got one other question, but here's one that just came straight in, right, which I think is brilliant, right? How do we balance between giving in times of need and being more direct and taking market opportunity in an ethical way? It's a balance question, really.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's about helping, but helping intelligently, right? So, you know, put your own oxygen mask on first, actually, you know, at the same time kind of is important advice for anybody that's trying to help others at this moment in time. If your business goes bump as a result of you doing nothing to look after your own business and trying to help yourself, that actually only in the end removes your ability to help other people. So if you're not around, if you cease to exist from a business point of view, I mean, you cease to be able to add value to others. So just because it's helpful doesn't mean it has to be free. And I think the balance that you need to strike at times like this is the balance of being able to go, what can I give? What can I afford to give? What do I want to give? And where does the meter need to go on? But not being afraid at the same time to flick the meter on if you've added value, obviously in a context where there is no you know, where there is no money changing hands. So it is that, it's simply that you've got to be able to put your own oxygen mask on, and that applies to this. And I think sometimes we get ourselves confused and we think that because we're being helpful and because you want to be altruistic and because you want to be there for other people, that means we have to be wholly self-sacrificing. You do not, and you should not, seek to be wholly self-sacrificing, because actually if you sacrifice yourself, if you wind it back, you can't help others anyway. So the balance has got to be struck by everybody individually, but I think the belief that underpins that is, or the belief that may underpin that question is, am I okay to be charging at this time? And the answer is yes, you are.
Brilliant. Okay, final question. So any techniques about how to create the one day idea sprints? I think you were talking about thinking about doing some research, creating a campaign in a day, that kind of stuff. So one day idea sprints is quite good phrasing for that. Any thoughts, any techniques for doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually a really good way of doing that would be to maybe chunk down the day into, say, 3 parts. So part one might be answer the 3 questions that we set out before. So what is it our clients really want to need? How do those needs intersect? And what can we offer given operational constraints? Do that for the first maybe third of the day. The second part of the day might be about writing that up. So getting that into a place where you have a one-pager, or you have a PowerPoint chart, or you have a web page or whatever built. And the third part of the day might be then about actually how do we start to have some conversations with people so that we can understand whether there's any appetite for this. The power of the phone call rather than the email at the moment is the key thing, right? So we're all desperate for human connection because all of us are sat in our own little rooms with no one to kind of like hug apart from our nearest and dearest, clearly. So it's like, how do we continue to reach out and talk to people at this point in time? And again, what I would say is when you're calling people in the afternoon, it doesn't necessarily be, it's not about going, I'm just calling you to flog you some stuff. What we're actually talking about here is thinking in a different sense, which is about research, is about finding opportunities to contribute. It's about, listen, I'm thinking at the moment that this is something that might be really beneficial. This is something that we're developing. Is it something that would be of interest to you? Could it make a useful contribution to your business? It's not selling in a kind of like, I've got 10 of these, do you want one kind of sense. It's much more about how do we get into a conversation with clients. And the reason that, back to this point, what is it clients really want and need right now? There are a lot of people out there at the moment who are struggling to cope. They think they're struggling to cope and they need help. Those are the people that will welcome phone calls about sensible help. So I think it's about just matching that together and understand there's an opportunity to contribute. So divide the day into thirds. So there's almost like the first part is sort of develop and design. The second part is work out how to take it to market. The third part is then research and refine, and you could potentially continue to then iterate the following day. I'll shut up in a second. What I'm pointing to here is also you don't necessarily have to do it in a day, right? You can do it across 2 days, but the point is be really, really quick. Don't overinvest time. Agile about it. Fail fast. We've been talking about failing fast for years. Now is the time we have to embrace that behaviour.
Absolutely brilliant, Phil. So first of all, thanks for all of you attending. Tomorrow we're going to be dealing with Daryl, or Daryl's going to be dealing with
Daryl.
Yeah, building personal and business resilience. You're very welcome, Daryl. He's on this call at the moment. So, and you can join us tomorrow. But that was the first episode of the Recession Rebellion, and weren't you lucky to be part of it? So thanks for coming along.